A broken body, unimaginable torment, a stench so foul it made even hardened guards retch. After his dismembered remains were displayed, his entrails were consumed by scavengers. This was the horrifying end of one of history's most defiant rebels. Today, we unveil the true story of the execution of William Wallace, a tale so gruesome it is rarely recounted in its full, brutal reality. William Wallace was born around 1270, the son of a minor Scottish noble. By the time he rose to prominence, he was considered Scotland's most formidable champion, tall, immensely strong, with a fierce spirit and an unwavering resolve. A contemporary chronicler wrote that he possessed an indomitable courage and a physique superior to any other man in Scotland. How then did this epitome of Scottish strength and freedom end up suffering such a debasing death? The turning point was his capture in August 1305 near Glasgow. Betrayed by a fellow Scot at approximately 35 years of age, Wallace was apprehended by English forces and swiftly transported to London. Though he had survived countless battles, his fate was now sealed. His capture transformed him from a symbol of resistance into a prisoner awaiting the ultimate humiliation. It was a devastating blow for a figure who had so defiantly challenged English rule. His captors were determined to break his spirit and make an example of him, without showing any mercy under penalty of facing the king's wrath. The capture also marked the beginning of his final agony. Coincidentally or not, it occurred during the same period when King Edward I of England was consolidating his brutal hold over Scotland, determined to crush all rebellion. Some historians suggest that the English king's personal animosity towards Wallace intensified the savagery of his planned demise. With his hands bound, Wallace was paraded through the streets of London, a spectacle designed to demoralize the Scots. His journey to the gallows was slow and deliberate, designed for maximum public exposure. The English legal system contributed enormously to his horrific end. Records show that Wallace was subjected to a sham trial for treason, a charge he vehemently denied, stating he could not be a traitor to a king he had never sworn allegiance to. A typical trial involved accusations of countless acts of sedition and bloodshed. This regimen, combined with the clear intention of his captors, dramatically accelerated his physical and mental deterioration. The preparations for his execution worsened over time. Executioners applied methods we now know were designed for maximum suffering: dragging through the streets, disembowelment while alive, and quartering that only prolonged his agony. His public display was so severe that his presence could be detected streets away. At his execution, Wallace was a defiant spirit. He described his suffering as a testament to Scottish freedom. However, the sheer brutality combined with his physical condition made the spectacle a grotesque display. The English, unable to break his will, sought comfort in the public torment of a young rebel. When his resistance was evident, the king ordered the execution to proceed with full barbarity. His last moments in August 1305 were more a political statement than a surrender. Wallace assumed the role of a martyr, facing his dying moments with surprising defiance. Considering the fate of countless Scottish rebels before him, in his final hours, Wallace suffered from the cumulative effects of torture and public humiliation. Modern experts believe he likely endured severe pain, extreme dehydration, and organ damage. Some suggest he was already weakened by deprivation, although this is disputed by many current historians who emphasize his unbroken spirit. This combination of torments transformed his last hours into continuous agony. Accounts from the period describe how Wallace alternated between periods of unbearable pain during which he silently endured and moments of defiant resolve when he refused to yield. Edward's paranoia intensified along with his physical suffering. The once brilliant military leader became obsessed with crushing all Scottish resistance, executing captured rebels and loyal Scots on unfounded suspicions. Terror dominated Scotland as an imprudent act, or a misinterpreted word could result in an accusation of treason. Notably, he ordered the display of Wallace's body parts across Scotland, just days after his brutal death. His fear of continued rebellion became an obsession. He implemented an elaborate system of patrols and informants requiring English soldiers to taste each provision before it reached their table, and all Scottish movements were meticulously inspected. This fixation may have been a symptom of his increasing mental instability, or the result of recurring minor uprisings. As the end approached, Wallace's suffering reached almost unimaginable levels. In his final moments, he was dragged naked through London streets, then hanged, but cut down before death. His entrails were then removed and burned before his eyes, intensifying the already unbearable horror. The English crowd became a place of morbid fascination and whispers with onlookers, covering their mouths while forcing themselves to remain in the presence of such barbarity. During his last hour in August 1305, the rebel's vitality deteriorated rapidly. He suffered from immense blood loss, probably due to internal injuries from the disembowelment. His breathing became increasingly labored and episodes of agony became frequent. Witnesses reported that during these moments, Wallace often whispered the names of his homeland, particularly Scotland, who they said inspired him. Curiously, despite his obviously terminal condition, no one in England dared suggest that Wallace was anything but a condemned traitor. English law considered it an act of defiance to show sympathy for a rebel. So, executioners and onlookers maintained the facade that his suffering was just, even when the horrific acts of dismemberment were already emanating from his still living body on August 23rd, 1305. Realizing that his end was near, Wallace finally allowed a priest to be called to his side. Unable to speak, he clutched a Bible when asked if he died in the Christian faith. This was his last conscious gesture. In the early hours of August 23rd, at approximately 35 years of age, the once powerful rebel exhaled his last breath, but the indignity of his condition did not end with death. Due to the English king's desire for a public spectacle, a special order was issued to dismember his remains. Preparing the body for public display was a horrifying challenge for the executioners. The dismemberment process at the time was rudimentary, primarily involving the removal of limbs and the public display of viscera. During the following days, while the body parts awaited their journey across Scotland, one of the most macabre episodes associated with Wallace's death occurred. His entrails, left on the execution ground, began to attract scavengers while they rested near the gallows. During the night, contemporary accounts describe a disturbing scene. Cadaveric remains trickled onto the ground where they were discovered by stray dogs that licked up the putrid substance. This story, recorded by chroniclers of the time, represents a profoundly humiliating end for a rebel who had built his image around freedom. Defiance and national identity? The mighty Wallace, who had challenged the English king, inspired Scottish rebellion, then fought for his homeland, ended as a mass of severed flesh, his body violated by street animals. The distribution of his body parts finally took place in the days following August 23, 1305, almost immediately after his death. Despite the unbearable sight emanating from the dismembered remains, the displays were conducted with all the grim solemnity expected for such a defiant figure. He was displayed in various towns across Scotland, including Berwick, Perth, Stirling, and Aberdeen, serving as a warning. Ironically, his brutal execution, whose intention had been to crush Scottish defiance, ignited a deeper resolve for independence under Robert the Bruce. The throne then passed to Robert the Bruce, who would ultimately secure Scottish independence. The agonizing execution of William Wallace serves as a powerful reminder of the limits of oppressive power. The rebel who considered himself above the law, capable of inspiring national rebellion and defying English rule at his whim, was in the end a victim of the brutal vengeance of a powerful king. His death was not just the end of a man, but the symbol of the forging of a nation. Scottish historian Peter Traquair wrote, "It is one of the great paradoxes of history that a man who began with so much promise, courage, and ability ended as a grotesque example of barbarity. Tormented by physical pain and mental anguish, feared and admired by those around him, but rarely truly understood." The transformation of William Wallace from idealistic patriot to dismembered martyr remains one of the most fascinating case studies of how absolute power combined with relentless cruelty and determined resistance can transform an individual. His political legacy. The inspiration of Scottish nationalism and the pursuit of independence continues to shape the modern world. But his personal end serves as a reminder of human resilience. The last moments of Wallace's life with his labored breathing and broken body contrast dramatically with the legends that show him in all his heroic majesty. This dissonance between public image and private reality is one of the great lessons of his life and death. Thus ended the existence of one of history's most renowned rebels, not with glory, but with an unbearable torment and an end unworthy of his cause. The man who transformed Scotland and permanently altered the course of Western history ended up, like all of us, a victim of the inevitable triumph of death. The execution of William Wallace was not just a historical event, but also a symbolic moment that reflects on the enduring nature of freedom. In his final moments, as the rebel's body was brutalized, so too did the myth of English invincibility in Scotland. The monarchy, a powerful institution that considered itself above the laws of its subjects, was forced to recognize the power of an idea. The final irony in William Wallace's life is that the man who strove so hard to secure Scottish independence, to the point of defying England and suffering a brutal execution, engendered a spirit of defiance that would lead to ultimate victory. His true legacy would come through the unwavering resolve of the Scottish people, inspired by the man executed under false accusations. Perhaps the deepest lesson in the death of William Wallace is that not even absolute power can conquer the limitations of the human spirit. The man who defied the laws of his oppressors to satisfy his desires for freedom could not be broken by the laws of nature. In the end, even the most powerful of kings faces the same fate as the humblest of rebels. The death of William Wallace is not just a story of medical horror, but a moral tale about the limits of human cruelty and the inevitability of enduring hope. His body, which was once admired as the embodiment of resistance, became a symbol of the triumph of national identity. This narrative reminds us that in the end, we are all equal before death, regardless of our achievements or social positions. The terrible execution of William Wallace continues to fascinate and inspire, because it reveals the vulnerable humanity behind the facade of absolute power.